All right, everyone. Today's video and plant of focus is cowpeas. There are different subversions of cowpeas. I'm just going to lump this all into one category, but I will go over a little bit of a difference in production between the different types. So this is my new experimental strip where I tested these out, and basically I see a con for those of you that may not be expecting this. I knew cowpeas got large, but I needed to know how large. And for poor soil, I've got vines in here that are over 12 feet in length. Some of them's probably in the neighborhood of 15 feet. So if you're not prepared to have something that looks like kudzu growing all in your food plot, that it can be presented as a con to this plant. Also, another con is once this plant starts maturing and rapidly vining out, deer tend to quit walking through this mess. That is like a spider's web of biomass growing in there, and walking through that is a nightmare. So just be aware that you don't want cowpeas necessarily running all over the place. It could actually send deer out of your plot because it's too difficult for them to walk through your plot and get ease of access food. You can see how much aggression is in the plant. This is another con depending on how you look at this. Aggression in this type of plant can choke out your other good material. I mean, this is literally one plant that has just vined all over the place. I've got some of it running up here. So be aware that cowpeas can be super aggressive, and it can work against you if you want some of your other species to thrive in this, even though I do have a daikon radish growing right there that's doing all right. So be aware, really aggressive plant can cause problems in your food plot if you don't want it to look like this. Another con is production. Now this is what I'm going to get into, and it's not the tonnage production, it is seed production. So depending on which version of a cowpea you get, they often list mung bean, red ripper, and iron and clay into the cowpea category. If you purchase iron and clay and expect to get seed off of this, 90% of you will never see it. These plants need to have extreme southern climate zones to do that. And I'm talking the very southern end of Alabama, Florida, and Texas, and parts of Louisiana. Basically, you're hugging the coastline areas, and probably about the third of Texas, you have a pretty good shot at getting pods. This is an extremely long season plant. I mean, if you picture kudzu, this is the version of kudzu that cowpeas is. It is just aggressive and everywhere. So you'll probably be disappointed if you want seeds for your animals after this is done growing, because most of you won't see it. Now I'm going to come back to this seed production thing when I get into the pros here. Now, another thing is, if deer don't browse this, and it's mainly because of the iron and clays actually have an odor in the leaves. I don't know how to explain this. It has an odd smell in the leaves. That's probably about the best way I can describe this. So your deer may not initially hit them because that odd smell in the leaves can turn deer off to them until they, basically it's like, think of it as like Limburger cheese. I mean, it's not that powerful, but it's like, oh, the smell can turn you off real quick and you don't want to eat it. But maybe if you tried it and it turns out it tastes good, then that's kind of what you're fighting the battle with on the iron and clays. Now, let's get into some of the positives or the pros of this plant. First off, the tonnage that is produced is off the scales. So anywhere I walk through here, you're going to see a matted mess of iron and clay and mung bean. Look how far up it's gotten into here. I mean, let me get up here to the end of the vine. So right here's the end. And over there is where it begins. So well over 12 feet right here. And it's not slowing down. These vines are still being super aggressive. So that's also a pro if you want something that can outpace deer, depending on your deer density, of course. This plant has potential to do that. These plants, as a pro, work fantastic growing up other species. So putting them in a blend is the best possible solution for these type of plants. You want something that grows tall and strong like sun hemp can do. That cowpea will race up it, which it's already doing. And you can add additional tonnage that way in smaller spaces. That is a very aggressive growing vine. Now here's the other thing. I'm going to get back to the production side of things. Depending on the type of plant you pick, determines what production you're going to get. Remember, I told you the con of cowpeas on iron and clay. Well, the mung bean and red ripper are the complete opposite. They tend to seed out a lot quicker than iron and clay. So over here we have the seeding process beginning right here. So there's one of your flowers that it makes. Here's the baby pod. It has a chance to grow multiple pods. Here's another one that's further along. Here's another one further along. So you can get more than 2, you can get more than 3. And then we have another area over here. I'm gonna have to just walk over here to get to it. That's progressed even further. And we have big pod here, various size pods here, really big pods right there. The mung bean and red ripper, and including the iron and clay, if it does produces massively long pods. There is a lot of beans in those pods, and it smokes what soybean produces as far as, you know, short stumpy pods like that have 2 or 3 beans in them. These guys produce large scale. So that's another huge bonus when it comes to grain production. And another big positive is the beans themselves are roughly 25% protein. That is a nice benchmark to grow some healthy deer. Turkeys are also attracted to mung beans. Your upland birds, game birds, they will go after them. Here's another valuable piece of information to me. Soybean has a little bit of a resistance factor when it comes to digestion for deer. Generally, you have to cook a soybean to get the full effect of it. Well, with the mung bean pods over here and your red rippers and your iron clays, if they do produce, you don't have to cook them. They eat them straight up and they can digest the bean plants. No problem whatsoever. So I do see valuable food supply here, especially if I'm having a down year on some of my soybean, like where the groundhogs have caused holes and gaps in here. Instead of having nice mats, I'm making up for it by sheer density from cowpeas. The other pro to this, it is also a legume. You treat this like soybeans or clover. It has nitrogen fixing abilities, and the larger the plant gets, the better those abilities are. So if you've noticed, I've got 2 nitrogen fixers side by side here. Some of this cowpea has probably rooted in by now. When those vines lay on the ground, they can root in and expand the plant even faster when that happens. But these leaves are extra green and got a little bit better size to them because I have two nitrogen producers working together for me. Same thing with sun hemp. I've got two nitrogen producers, cowpeas and sun hemp, working together, and that has created some extra large cowpeas, and it's really starting to help the sun hemp. This strip is in its first round of restoring, so I wasn't really expecting too much out of this, but I'll go ahead and tell you, these cowpeas have outperformed any plant that I've ever started with as far as aggression in poor soil. I have compared this with soybean, and soybean generally is kind of easy to grow once you get your ground fixed up. But cowpeas, which this is a major pro, tend to grow much better in poor soils. They are also heat tolerant plants. Some drought resistance is there, not too much. It's more the heat tolerance on these. You'll probably notice the growth rates will rapidly slow down if you're in a very dry year, just like most plants would do. But in this case, this plant has just been non-stop. Now another pro, this video is kind of getting a little bit of link to it, but another pro for cowpeas is the protein that the leaves provide. Now, it's not quite on the scale of, per se, some of this Eagle Seed soybean I've got here, but now this all depends on your soil conditions, but in good soil, you're probably going to get easily 25 to 30% protein out of these, and it can creep higher than that if you have that excellent range in soil depth. That if your good soil has some depth to it, you probably could eke out over 30% protein. Leaf sizes, tonnage, like I mentioned earlier, is massive once these plants get going. Leaves that I have noticed are slightly larger than some of my soybean plants. Roughly on average ground, it would be comparable to what soybean is on this particular version. Although most of them, this is probably not the best example. This one has a little bit smaller leaves than most of my plants, but it's going to be on the average bigger than this one. So that provides big bites for the deer. Also, this plant has some browse tolerance to it. If the deer eat the end of the vine off, it will branch off and keep branching. But if there is too much pressure on the plant, you definitely won't see it look like this. It'll stay very short as long as deer can keep it under control. So if they can't, this is what you get. Now, there is one other bit of information here, and that would be the benefits of the roots. They have a fairly large root system compared to what soybean does. And plus the roots can expand beyond where you've planted it. So once these vines touch the ground, they can send a root out. I found a few that were rooted in. So your root mass can vary in size quite a bit, or it can kind of be small if it doesn't get a chance to root in. So that produces more rotting biomass under the soil. So once these plants die and decay, you've got the high biomass from the leaves decaying, and then you have the biomass from the roots decaying, and that helps progress soil restoration work. So this is one plant that I am paying close attention to, and I'm waiting to see how this strip responds for next year. And while I'm at it, there is another con to this. If you're trying to sow fall blend in here, it can be a challenge at times. If it's grown up something where you see how it's mounded up here, that creates a huge shade canopy. So it might be a little difficult to sow some fall blend in there at first. You may have to overseed that and try to give yourself the best chance, or wait longer than you really want to and let some of the leaves die off. But hopefully you've got deer browsing it and keeping it under control. So that's pretty much all I've got. And once again, if I missed information I think is important, I will add that to the video. Oh, while I'm thinking of it, there is one little small piece to this. The cowpeas have, this is a pro, they have a small amount of tannin in the plant. Tannin helps drive protein digestion for deer. So you're actually boosting the ability for deer to digest protein when you use cowpeas. No matter which version you have, they have tannin in them when they're smaller. And then when they get larger, it switches to large amounts of sugar or higher amounts of sugar. So you'll notice a browse period at the beginning, then there might be a little bit of a lull, and then it will pick up again when the sugars are getting dispensed into the plant. All right, guys, so I hope you enjoy this video. I love doing these plant information videos to help you out. It's increased my knowledge, and it's really helped me select what I want to put in my food plots to try to get the best return out of my deer possible and the best return out of my soil possible. Again, if you like this video, hit that like and subscribe button and that notification bell so you can receive new video updates as I post them. You all have a wonderful day.